You know, I don't even know. I don't know if we're live. I don't know if we're live. Let's see. Let's see. You know, first time for everything. Let's check. Let's check and see if it's... I don't know if I'm live right now. I don't know if I'm here. Until I know if I'm here or not, I'm not going to say anything problematic, you know. But because I'm probably not live, let me rank my favorite religions, and then I'll rank my favorite races after that. Okay, I am here. I am here. I see now that I am live. I see that it's happening. What's up, everyone? It's Wisecrack Live. I'm your buddy Michael. So this is my first time running. I thought I could look up the chat. It's not giving me the option to see the chat. Let me see if tools, profile, docs. There we go. Chat. Let me see what you sickos are saying. Gotta see what the sickos are saying in the chat. What's up, guys? This is Wisecrack Live. It's a little different than normal. I'm going to say hi in the chat. Now, you know, today Henry's not here. Producer Henry's not here, as he normally is. So I just want to say, I guess today's a good day to be a psycho in the chat. Like, if you want to be a psycho in the chat, I guess today would be the day to do it. I would say don't, maybe. But I'm excited to see some of you here. Why so blue? The lighting is meant to signify my mental state. But yeah, oh, epoch philosophy. Epoch, I always say that word wrong. But hey, it's my first ever solo journey on Wisecrack Live. Shouts to producer Lux who got me set up today to do this. You know, running the old OBS off the old laptop. We'll see if this laptop dies on this journey. It might. Let's see. I just want to make sure I'm not doing too much on the old computer, you know. We don't want to run this thing into the ground here. But so, you know, if you were here on Wednesday for normal Wisecrack Live, we got cut off early because Henry had some issues with AT&T internet in Texas. If you're near an AT&T office in Texas, egg them, you know, egg their house or something like that. Oh, is it quiet for people? I can turn it up because you know what? I realize I don't know what my audio source is. So let's see. It says mic aux active. I'm gonna make sure I have the right microphone. Is the audio quality shitty? Let's see. So for sound, and listen, thanks for hanging out as I figure all this out, you guys. I really appreciate it. I appreciate it very much. Let's see. I just changed settings. Okay. Thanks for being everyone. And again, I appreciate you. Okay, someone said good sound now. Great. Great. Okay. And again, if you're just showing up, I'm doing this solo today. Lux, if you're here, look at me. I added text to the bottom. I'm basically a high-level video editor now, guys. The text on the bottom lets you know this is Wisecrack Live. It lets you know you can join our Patreon if you want. And I put our coffee partners down there as well because they're le homies. Audio mixer. Cool. So, thanks for being here. As I talked about before, I forgot one thing. You know what? I'm going to be right back. I'm truly going to be right back. Don't go. If you don't go anywhere, I'm going to keep talking so no one goes anywhere. If you go anywhere, I'm going to be so mad. I'm going to be so fucking pissed. Okay. There we go. And yeah, Epoch Philosophy is a great channel. Check them out if you haven't. You know what I saw on Twitter earlier today? Our buds at the channel, Then and Now, are looking for some editing and motion graphic design help. So check that out. If you're an editor or a motion graphic designer or anything like that, go find Then and Now. I I think they did a post on their channel too, and go fucking work for them. That'd be an awesome channel to work for. It's a great channel. They do great stuff. If he's gone for 15 minutes, we can leave. Someone's referencing the college rule. Do anyone remember this from college, or if your professor didn't show up at like a certain time, you were allowed to go? So there you go. Guillermo left so hard. Video quality will be better if you turn up the lights. There's a light right in front of me. I can get my face closer to it. You know, I could really get up in there. You know, let's see. But we're trying our best. So what happened is that the stream got shut down by the feds, the AT&T feds, on Wednesday, largely because, you know, they wanted to take us down. They don't want us to speak truth to power, things of that nature. Let's see. Is there a way I can do this? Well, I'll just see what happens. If you use half of bisexual lighting, it is straight lighting. That is a true thing. But, you know, we're trying to speak truth to power, and we got shut down. We were talking about the Brianna Wu trigonometry interview video. We didn't get to finish it. And, you know, what we would have said if we were going to finish it is we agreed with everything they said. We, too, are leaving the left, and Brianna Wu is today's Trotsky, is today's Lenin, is today's vanguard of sort of political intellect, the person who we will go to war for. That's not true at all. She's a goof. She's a total goof. All these people are goofs. There's goofs and grifters out there who just want to take advantage of political participation to do stuff like this. But, you know, the other thing we're going to talk about Wednesday is our buddy Jordan Eduardo Peterson. I'm pretty sure that's his middle name. Did another video about Marx where he talks to a guy, an academic from, I'm pretty sure, a small Christian college. And no hate on that. I went for my undergrad to like a small Christian college. Wasn't fun. I don't really recommend it. But he talks about Marx. And, you know, we did a video, like a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. It's one of our most watched videos in the past few years on Jordan Peterson and Marx. And, oh, fuck, the chat went away. My beloved chat, where hath thou gone? Oh, Julia's here. What's up? Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. It's so good to see some of these names. We really love it. And Henry is in Quebec right now. He's getting Quebec hoard. This is my Kenobi lighting for sure. Yes, we are here on a Friday. It's just a makeup stream. This one's casual. Producer Henry is not here. Today, I am both your host, Michael, and producer Michael. Hopefully I do a better job as a host than I am doing as a producer. But you know what? I'm trying my best. So, you know, we did this video on Jordan Peterson and Marx, and some might say, why are you platforming Jordan Peterson? Well, of course we can't. We're not platforming Jordan Peterson. He's so much more famous and well-known than I am, and all that sort of stuff. Looks like my nose has like a smudge thing on it. Yeah, the stupid, my trisexual lighting, my polyamorous lighting is being weird. And if anyone says, I saw someone say their chat message disappeared, I'm not deleting chat messages today. It's just me, and both my hands are up. So there you go. Yeah, Henry's doing stuff for the show tomorrow that he and Lux do. Always, if you're in Texas, do stuff with Henry and Lux. Go to all their shows. They're very fun. But, you know, the reason why I'm still interested in talking about Peterson in this context is that I'm just so curious what's happening. The reason I'm interested in talking about Peterson is that he's super influential, whether we like it or not. Lots of people watch his videos. People go and see him speak in public. People listen to him. There's people that are part of this community and this audience who at various points have said, like, yeah, I kind of mess with him. How's the ADHD dead card? I got to take my thing. I didn't take my thing yet. I got to take my thing. But I've talked so openly about ADHD on stream that every now and then there'll be a comment that's like, oh, this guy, he's a gaunt Adderall addicted freak. There we go. So God, Lux, stop promoting your other stuff under the official Wisecrack moniker. I'm sure somehow that's illegal. It's a breach of contract somehow. And so, again, the reason why we tend to talk about Jordan Peterson, the reason why I've talked about him before, is an influential figure, whether we like it or not. People listen to him. A lot of you, I don't know any of you in particular, but people who hang out with us, who watch sometimes, will be like, yeah, I used to like this guy. And Jordan Peterson does a really good job at speaking specifically to younger men on the internet. And I see our demographics, and I know that a lot of you are younger men on the internet. I just know that. I know that an overall majority of you are between 24 and 35. Most of you live in America or Canada. I'm not trying to stalk. I don't know your addresses. That's about as deep as the data goes. I will say in recent years, though, our demo has grown to where a lot more women and non-binary people watch the channel, and that rips. The old Wisecrack demo was like 97% men. But I guess my soft boy energy is really opening up the door for that. So, we want to talk about Peterson again because people listen to him, and he talks about Marx 46 in Scotland, but 46 Scotland is 23 in America. The Scottish age young. But he has a new episode about Marx. I think it's important to talk about because people take this stuff seriously, for better or worse. Let's see what happens when I switch scenes. Before I switch scenes, there is a thing on the bottom. You'll see we still have our coffee partner. Again, they don't pay us, so this isn't like a fucking chill thing. Coffee partner is called Yes Please. They make really good coffee. Here's my favorite of the newest batch. It's the one from Peru. If you go to yesplease.coffee, use the code Wisecrack, you get 20% off. Yeah, see, you would go to their website and you would click shop, and then if you would be like, single origin, that sounds good. Oh, Guatemala, that sounds really fun. And then you would add to cart, and then you would check out, and then, is it going to show my information? Please don't. And then you would type in Wisecrack, and you would click apply, and then the price just went down by a lot. It's that easy. It's that easy to do it right there. Now, of course, if you wanted to go really crazy with it, you could, you can get multiple things, and then the discount would apply for all of those. I wonder if it works. Let's do something crazy. Does our code work on a $3,000 coffee machine? Let's see if it does. Let's go to checkout just with this. I don't know why I'm doing this, guys. I just find this kind of fun. Oh, it's out of stock. So we can't get 20% off a $3,000 thing. Man, I want them to send me a hat, actually. Fuck, they have cool merch. I haven't seen this before. Okay, but either way, they really do have good coffee. I really like them a lot. Can't recommend it highly enough. They do not pay us to say any of this. Dead ass. They do not pay us to say any of this. It's just a thing where if you order some, we get a little bit of a kickback from them. So, if you're a coffee person, check it out. And again, if we go back to here, you'll see it's just yesplease.coffee. I'll put that in the chat as well, just in case. Yes, please. Yes, please. Coffee. I can spell. There you go. And get yourself some friggin' coffee. Get yourself some friggin' coffee. Okay. Like the stream if you haven't already. That's the thing I got to tell you to do. It's a casual Friday stream. So when someone says, is this coffee or pushing like Cuban coffee? Drift King, it's not Cuban coffee, but they make coffee from a lot of other places. Someone said in the chat, Jordan Peterson actually talked about Marx. He talks about what Marxism created and led to. So this is interesting. He does talk about Marx sometimes. He literally will talk about Marx and will refer to Marx himself. He'll refer to, what's up, Budget Ballin'? Long time no see. They don't ship to Europe. I do think the coffee, you have to be in America. I'm sorry about that. But no, Peterson does talk about Marx himself. He also makes a lot of very weird conflations. So, okay, let's see how this works. So here's the video. Look at me. Look at me just pulling up a video just to share with you all. How great is that? Pausing and then effing through the sponsor block. It wasn't really a sponsor block. Just me talking about coffee. Okay, so this guy is Dr. Paul Kengor. This is a long video. We're not going to watch all of it. I have it on 1.25. If the 1.25 is too much, and enough of you say, Michael, it's too much, then we'll slow down a little bit. Okay, we'll slow down. But like the stream, it helps us if you haven't. We'll check the volume levels here. When I start too, let me know how we're doing like volume wise. If the audio from the video isn't too crazy, or if it needs to be louder, whatever.
Was all about.
I like how he plays this music like he's like a Renaissance figure.
Hi, everybody. I have the privilege of speaking with Paul Kengor today. He's written a book, many books. One of them is, for example, The Crusader, Ronald Reagan, and the Fall of Communism. This is going to be...
Why would we not take someone seriously who wrote a book that calls Ronald Reagan the Crusader? I mean, this isn't too political, guys. Ronald Reagan sucks.
He made into a movie. I just interviewed the lead actor for that movie a couple of weeks ago.
It's very funny that Jack Quaid is in The Boys and his dad is making Reagan movies that Jordan Peterson talks about.
Dennis Quaid. And so that'll be releasing, the movie will be releasing at the end of August. Paul is also the editor of the American Spectator, and this month's version has a list of the best...
Okay, volume's too loud. We're going to fix it. Okay, here's our screen capture. We're going to turn the volume down. I'm going to put it at this level. I'm going to start it again. Let me know how this is.
Conservative colleges in the United States. And so that could be a very helpful list for those of you who are thinking about going to college or who have children who are thinking about going.
How's that? Was that a little better? Was that a little better, guys? Just let me know. Okay, so it's still too loud? Okay, I'm going to turn down even more. I'm going to turn it down even more. Tell me now.
Going to college. So that's the American Spectator. And so, but what we're concentrating on today is actually a different book, The Devil and Karl Marx. And
I don't think we're going to get Raw Dome on Casual Friday. That would be incredible if we did. Okay, so someone says good. Okay, we got better. We're not going to get perfect on this one, okay? But let me know. Great.
I like this book, not least because it delves into Karl Marx's work as a poet and a playwright. And it sheds light, I think, on the underlying structure of his motivation for the so-called economic theories that he developed later.
So-called economic theories.
We discuss the Mephistophelian nature of the fantasies, the poetic fantasies that Karl Marx developed as a young man, and how I read your book, The Devil and Karl Marx, recently. And there is a lot of it was striking to me for a couple of reasons. I suppose reasons that are more idiosyncratic to me. There are many reasons that it's of general interest. But so the first one was, one of the things I noticed about my students, especially the ones that were really searching, is that if I gave them free rein to write an essay, they'd often they'd include or want to show me a poem that was relevant to that pursuit. And then my first book, Maps of Meaning, actually started as about a 40-page poem.
Wow.
Well, and so...
Yeah, so I know where you're going with this.
Okay. So, so I studied...
That's when he's like, I know where you're going with this. First of all, I kind of don't believe that all of his students just wanted to write poems. I taught for a long time. Maybe I didn't create a poetic vibe in my classrooms, but I don't know. Also, I do not believe that Jordan Peterson's Maps of Meaning book, which is like an academic text, started as a 40-page poem. I just don't believe it. I just don't. But, you know.
Jung's analysis of creative thought a lot. And Jung had this notion, which I think is right, that when we first investigate something that we don't understand, we fantasize about it, right? Which in some ways seems so obvious that it hardly needs to be said, but it does need to be said, because you fantasize about it, or you dream about it, or you daydream about it. And what you're doing is you're using what you already have a grip on to get a new grip on this indeterminate object. Yeah. And that's fantasy. And
like, I'm not saying what he's saying right now is problematic or bad. It's just a little hand wavy.
And so you have, it's like you have.
When we say hand wavy, academics sometimes use that term when someone just kind of like says a thing, and maybe the thing sounds right, maybe it is right, but you're kind of just like saying stuff.
The dream.
I mean, I probably do that a lot.
And then you have...
But I also don't wear fancy suits and present myself as the mind of a generation.
The drama. No, you have the drama, and then you have the dream, and then you have something like the poem, because a poem is where the dream meets the verbal. And then you can...
I'm sorry, I got to pause because of a great comment. Nimjed said there's a case to be made about being an aspect of Christian eschatology to Marx's perception of historical development. Absolutely. And that's why there's been so much good work were people who understand theology and eschatology. Eschatology is the part of theology, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Nimjed, that's about like the end times and things kind of changing and coming together. But yeah, there's something. So that's why like people who tend to, and we'll get to this in the video, people who tend to only appreciate or understand Christianity from this like moral, conservative political level hate Marx, but a lot of people that understand Christianity or Judaism from a theological perspective, vibe with the stuff a lot more.
Differentiate that further so it becomes more and more semantic and more explicit. Now, this is a long way of asking you this question. Mm-hmm. One of the things you took pains to do in this book was to concentrate on some of Marx's work before he was an economist, because he wrote drama and he wrote poetry. And so, and your claim in the book is that, well, we should really be paying attention to some of that early work because it does something like set the frame. It sheds.
Okay, so I think this is dumb. I'll tell you why I think it's dumb. Now, some of you might be saying, isn't that like good scholarship that the guy who wrote this book, to understand Marx's later economic work, looked at like poems he wrote when he was legit a teenager or in college? When I was in college, I used to write music. And some of the music I wrote would have lyrics. If you tried to use the lyrics from the songs I wrote in college as a hermeneutic device to understand later academic work I wrote or things I do now, you would be wasting your time reading horrible lyrics written by a sad 20-year-old that couldn't get laid. But I think you would be way overdoing and overstating the value of those things, acting as if by reading a fragment of something I had written at that age, you could access my psychological motivation enough. I just said psychological like a Canadian because I'm just in like full Peterson mode now. I went full JP. I just think it doesn't work. So there's a famous, God, who said this? It might have been Heidegger, but it probably wasn't. But there's some instance where a German philosopher, let's just say it was Heidegger, was teaching Aristotle, and a student or someone is like, but shouldn't we consider like Aristotle's biography or da-da-da? And he was like, here's what matters. He was born, he wrote a bunch, and he died. And I kind of think that is important, that when we analyze text, we don't think that we can be armchair psychoanalyst and determine the real meaning of the text by like a poem a college student wrote years ago. I'll start at Patreon level where I release songs I wrote in college. They were like sad. They were like really like sad. It was some like emo shit.
Light on his motivation, and it also sheds light on the story that he was imagining or acting out. So can you make some comments about that?
Yeah, so this is quite fascinating. I think you should write the next forward. The forward for this one was written by Michael Knowles, a colleague of yours at Daily Wire. Yeah.
His book on Marx, the forward, is written by Michael Knowles. Michael Knowles is an idiot. He's not a scholar, not an academic, doesn't have a background in Marx or any of this stuff. Worth noting as well that Dr. Paul Kengor, and here, let's do some work. Let's go to Dr. Paul Kengor. Is that what he looks like? I love Wikipedia. Education, worked in political science, master's degree, his doctorate from public and international affairs. He did poorly in high school, but it changed after becoming a Christian. He enjoys hunting and fishing. Really good for you, bud. Here we go. Let's check this out. Affiliations, areas of expertise, internationally recognized author, particularly Ronald Reagan. Courses taught, released 2 books. Let's see, any good publishers? I'm sorry, I know I'm bouncing around here. I just want to see. Okay, cool. We're gonna wait. Hi, would you like to chat about Grove City College? No, I would not. I think I'm good at this time. However, you ever watch Wisecrack? Who knows? We'll see what they say. But yeah, Michael Knowles isn't a philosopher. I'll keep that tab open. We'll come back and see if they, respond to us later.
So Marx fancied himself a poet. I mean, Marx's secret love was poetry. In fact, one of his, I think, his most important biographer.
When he says Marx's secret love is poetry, that's a funny thing to say, that it's a secret love, because one of the most famous lines, I want to say it's German ideology, but it might not be, so don't sue me, is literally about how, like, the goal of communism as he sees it is a society where one can spend time on their poetry, on fishing, on reading, on spending time with their family. Like, it just, and also, I think this also, this fails to understand the historical and intellectual context in which Marx was working. Like, there's a reason why in the mid 18th century, 19th century, a lot of German philosophers also wrote poetry and plays, because Romanticism and idealism collided in a way where people thought that we could get at philosophy through narrative, through poetry, through art. And we see this up until the modern era. I mean, like, you know, Sartre wrote novels, as did de Beauvoir. A philosopher I talk about a lot, Alain Badiou, has written plays and poetry. It's just like not an uncommon thing, and the way in which they're acting like it's completely shocking, new, original. What are we going to figure out? Like, a lot of people do a lot of different stuff. I'm sure
and
a lot
this
of
guy
you do
has
different
been,
stuff.
It's kind of fallen. People just don't know about him today. No one had anything against him really, but his name was Robert Paine. So he was a British academic, man of letters, the arts, a translator, drama. I mean, he was no right winger. He was probably slightly left of center. He did did several works on Marx, late 60s, early 1970s, published by New York University Press, Simon & Schuster. So, you know, very credible. And he was really the first one to mine Marx's poetry, to go through and figure it out.
How much of it is there? How much poetry?
Well, there's quite a bit, and it's deeply disturbing stuff. All right, a lot of it is about the devil, and, you know, quite literally about the devil. It's chilling, right?
This guy's such a cop. Like, you've never hung out with a fucking teenager that wrote poetry about dark shit.
You know, thus heaven I forfeited. I know it full well. My heart, once true to God, is chosen for hell.
That's not disturbing. That's someone being dramatic. Like, has he read Dante? Like, what does he do? And here's what you got to ask yourself as well. If you're going to write an analysis, and maybe the book has this, I've not read the book. Maybe we should try to illegally download it while we watch this. But, like, if you don't have an accurate conception of the poetic styles of mid-19th century Germany, it's really stupid to try to do an analysis of the poems people are writing then. For example, like, if you didn't know anything else, and maybe you looked at, like, rap lyrics from a certain era, and you're like, oh my God, this is crazy. It's like, yeah, dog, you heard of hyperbole? You heard of narrative devices, dramatizing and heightening human emotions to make a point in art? You ever hear that one, Chief?
Right. 1837. Straight Lucifer. From,
I know we're not doing
Milton.
like
1837.
Stuff
that one was. It was one of his first published writings. He would have only
Milton,
been
right?
19 years old at that time. Another one. So it's called The Player, and it was 1841. And here he puts himself, it appears, in the form of this kind of mad violinist who's like frenetically, maniacally sawing away at the violin, and he's summoning up the powers of darkness. And he's doing this in front of his love interests. And the love interest,
one does.
Yeah, right. And the love interest, Robert Paine says, appears to be his girl at the time, Jenny, the girl that he would end up marrying. And he's summoning up the powers of darkness. And she's saying,
there's a great book called Love and Capital, which I'm pretty sure this guy hasn't read, that's all about the life of Marx and Jenny, you know, their kids and everything. It's written by an actual historian and really good scholar. I forgot the name of the person. I feel bad now, but it's a really good book. I should have pulled it out, but a lot of my books are still stacked up because I moved and I put them all in the garage and I haven't taken them out yet. That's why I'm getting dumber. But yeah.
Why are you doing this to him? It's like a Faustian bargain. More on Faust and Goethe and Mephistopheles in a moment. But just to sort of set the table for people.
So he references the fact that Marx is referencing Faust and Mephistopheles, literary figures, but then he's satanic for referencing those figures.
We're shocked by what I said about him writing about the devil. So here's what he says in The Player. Here's just one stanza.
They get pinned
He tells the girl, "Look now, my blood-dark sword shall stab unerringly within thy soul. The hellish vapors rise and fill the brain, till I go mad and my heart is utterly changed. See the sword, the prince of darkness sold it to me. For he beats the time and gives the signs. Ever more boldly I play the dance of death." And then he plays this sort of Faustian bargain. And but to back up a little bit, that's his poetry from an early age. And Robert Paine, So who wrote the book, the Simon & Schuster book, the New York University Press said Marx's first love was poetry. And he fancied himself as aspiring to be nothing less than the Goethe of his age, to write the Faust of his age.
Every freaking young person who wants to be a writer or an academic when they are freaking 18 years old wants to be the blank of their age. This is just, and it's clear that this is a person who just like wasn't ever creative. Now there's stuff in this that like we're not gonna get into because it's so dumb. Like there's one section called How Marx Lived, Disorder and Disgust. We'll watch a second of it. But one of the arguments they basically make is that because Marx, it's truly this, guys. It's that because Marx didn't make his bed like a good boy, that we shouldn't take him seriously. Also, again, the idea that we can evaluate the truth of someone's intellectual work on how they kept their house. Like, to be honest, you could be the worst parent in the world. You could be a horrible cook. You could sleep in your own filth, but you could still write something good. And I think we know historically there's so many people that write great movies, great academic works, good poetry, good novels, who are just pieces of shit, you know? But that doesn't necessarily do that. How's it going in the chat? If it gets too crazy, let me know. And maybe I can make someone a mod or something like that if someone wants to help me out. But let me know. Ad hominem. I just like saying ad hominem. It's fun to say.
Well, you also talk in the book a fair bit about the sordid details of his private life. I mean, Marx was also, by all accounts, a person who was filthy in every way, essentially, that you could be filthy. Like literally, because his personal hygiene habits were detestable, to say the least. Sure. But he also lived in well, you're better at explaining this than me. So do you want to walk through that?
And I would circle this back to the point of disorder.
Right, exactly.
So it is a totally disordered personal lifestyle. His father noticed it when Marx was in college. And then when Marx got married.
This is the weirdest armchair psychology shit ever from someone whose PhD is in international affairs. You're going to read anecdotal evidence that someone was disordered in their lifestyle. And sure, you want to talk about disordered lifestyle, guys? I'm going to admit something disgusting right now, so mute for 30 seconds if you don't want to hear something disgusting about your friend Michael. My first semester of college, I didn't wash my bedding. I kind of just didn't get that you're supposed to wash it regularly. So my sheets, my comforter, my pillows, months, didn't wash them. Sweaty, disgusting 18-year-old in my dorm room doing God knows what, mostly playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater on GameCube. But like to basically say anything Michael Burns has said as an adult should not be taken seriously because as an 18-year-old he was disgusting, and I was. That's a silly argument. We all know that.
His life was a wreck. And both his mother and his wife both expressed the wish that Carl would start earning some capital, right? Rather than just writing about it. The family had to beg for money all the time, everywhere that they went. So first they got the money from Carl's father, all right?
Oh no, John.
And then when he died, and by the way, Marx didn't attend the funeral of his father. Some biographers have said that's because it was out of spite against his father.
Okay, like he didn't go to his dad's funeral. Maybe that was like uncool. Maybe his dad was a dick. Maybe he didn't feel like going. I don't know. Doesn't matter.
Biographer says he just couldn't make it there, maybe because of the weather. I don't know. But he didn't go to the funeral of his father. He was interested in his father's money. And the one letter that I quote from his father, the father's like, okay, here.
I'm going to say this. This is going to be slightly problematic. They're talking about Marx, Jewish guy, and I'm going to say that anti-Semitic stereotypes are being used. I'm not going to go too deep into this. But like, he was like a dirty little conniving guy that just loved money. This feels kind of bad. Feels bad for these two guys to be saying.
Here's what you really want. I will give you the money for whatever. So he clearly knows that the son wants money. After the father died, he went to visit his mother, who he wasn't close to at all. He was at least a little close to the father. And the goal was to get money from the old lady. And he writes a letter back to Jenny, his wife, ahead of time, basically reporting that, well, I really didn't get much money out of the old lady, but she did agree to burn up the IOUs. So in other words, success. Right?
Okay, I'm going to skip ahead to the actual part on the Communist Manifesto. But up until this point, as you've heard, this academic is trying to level legitimate critiques that somehow discredit the academic and economic works of Karl Gustavo Marx on the basis of he wrote dark poems as a teen, he was dirty as a young man, and he didn't like his dad. I don't know, guys. I'll be honest. My dad didn't suck. I liked him a good amount. But if I had a dad who just sucked and then he died and then he was going to give me money, I'd be like, sick. This is great. I think, I'll say it. If your parent sucks and they die, take all their money. You should. You deserve it. Because what you deserved, to be honest, is to have a good parent. All of you deserve that. If you didn't get that, at least I hope you get some money out of the deal. Jesus. Okay. So let's watch them talk about the Communist Manifesto.
He was a very disordered individual at so many different areas of his life. Even his research, we could probably talk about this later. You and I are both PhDs. We've done academic social.
Oh, you and I are both PhDs. No one is like cool. Like, I don't know. No one who's cool is like, oh, we're both PhDs.
Science research. Marx never went into the field or the factory. I mean, he wrote about the proletariat from the vantage, from the library, from a desk in the library in London or at his home. He never actually did real field research.
Did this guy take a time machine back to the Reagan presidency when he wrote his book on Reagan? Again, I think that this is a weird category mistake that you need to do field research to write about economics. I don't think that's true. And I think if you read a book like Capital, I don't think what that book is missing is like on the ground reporting. Also, I'm pretty sure that's untrue. I'm not pulling up sources right now. The other thing is some of the work he wrote with Engels. Engels had a lot of experience in factories because his family owned them. But so that's kind of just leaving that out as well, which is weird. But again, these are like, and this is the thing that I noted before in the longer video by Jordan Peterson and Marx. And he does this when he talks about Marx. He does this one. And again, this is this guy. This is this other guy, but Mr. Paul. Emilio Kengor. But, we've yet to hear a criticism of Marx's work. We've yet to hear a criticism. And here's the thing, too. I am not some aggressive defender of Marx. Marx said things that were wrong and not good and not perfect. But he also said some very interesting things and developed a methodology that's still being used today because of how interesting and important it was. But like, the point here isn't to say Marx was never wrong. The point is to say when people with influential platforms are making grand pronouncements, like say some shit, talk about their work. An example of this is, when we did the video about Marx a year ago, he talks about Marx and nature and Marx and science, and he just says stuff about how Marx didn't write about science, didn't care about biology. And then in that video, I just quote multiple passages of text where Marx talks about science. And it's just like, oh, you're just saying stuff. You're just saying stuff. And that's fine. It's fun to say stuff with our friends. But, there you go. Hey, thanks for hanging out again. If you're just pulling in, this is our special makeup stream. It's me, Michael. I'm producer Henry today. I'm the producer now. I'm doing it all. It'd make me feel good if we could get to 666 on a stream that's about the devil and Karl Marx. So like the stream, share it. Let's get to 666. I can't see the numbers in front of me. I know we're in the 5s or something, but that'd be really fun to get to 666 on this one.
And if you read the Communist Manifesto, it is not the work of an economist. It is more like a polemic. It's more like a philosophical statement.
Okay. The Communist Manifesto isn't an economic work. When he says a polemic, it's also, I think it's polemic is how you say that word. I mispronounce words all the time, so that's really unfair and bitchy of me to say. It is a philosophical work. It is a polemic. It was a tract written for workers. It was not an academic work. And this is what happened when Jordan Peterson did his famous debate with Slavoj Žižek. He references the manifesto, and it's like, you are missing the point. But let's keep going.
He said once, the revolution that began in the brain of the monk, that would be Martin Luther. He says this in his Opium of the Masses essay, will now begin in the brain of the philosopher. So he really fancies himself a philosopher and a poet. A poet above all. He's really not an economist. If he has
that was probably
crappy one.
Well, that was probably
a crappy. That's We're not going to get into that, but
inaccurate self-characterization, because
and like the whole point about the monk to the philosopher is the materialist transformation, right? I think he doesn't understand this. A big thing with Marx is that he's operating in an era where philosophically we're leaving an era of idealism. Now, what is idealism? We're going to be very, quick here. It's philosophical tendency that prioritizes concepts and thought, that there is an ideal structure to reality and that our mind can sort of map onto that thing. So what we're doing philosophically is we're thinking about ideas. We're sitting in our room. We're developing concepts, and we're seeing how those concepts unfold. Think about someone like Hegel here. Now, Marx famously turned Hegel or idealism on its head. The point being, we're less focused on ideal concepts, but more focused on material reality and analyzing things in terms of their material conditions, which means when we think of an idea, we don't just say, the magic, perfect idea. We say, well, what material and historical conditions led to the emergence of this idea, and how can analyzing those conditions help us out? This is why I think a lot of like online people and streamers sometimes, and I think many of them do not have an ill intent here. I think some do, but most don't. But I think when they talk about contemporary politics and society, they miss this point, and they're doing idealism, even if they don't realize they're doing idealism, because they're trying to say, oh, here's what's happening in this part of the world. Here's what's happening in this thing. But they don't look at the material and historical conditions that led to the thing. Okay. So when Marx talks about the monk to the philosopher, he's saying we're going from a spiritual ideal realm of understanding to a historical and material realm.
Yeah. His work really, I know there are economists who've fallen under his sway, let's say, but his work really served the purpose of motivational doctrine, right? So the typical writings of an economist aren't taken up by...
Oh, wait, our buddy Jay's here. Jay Ashland, credentials don't matter in general. If you have an academic text and you're bragging that someone wrote an intro, they should be an expert in that field. I do not want to read a book about biology where the foreword is written by someone who is not a biologist. I don't want to think of it this way. I don't want a recommendation on what Korean restaurant to eat at from someone who's never eaten Korean food and doesn't understand the dishes. So the reason I'm not making fun of them for being academics, I think it's corny to be like, we're both PhDs, like whatever, sure. And again, Jay, you know this, and I appreciate Jay. I mean this very genuinely. Jay Ashland hangs out in the chat sometimes, especially when we talk about Peterson. I know he's a big Peterson head. I appreciate that Jay takes the time to listen to me talk about this stuff, even as I imagine the stuff I'm saying probably makes Jay want to get in a car, drive to California, and slap me in the face. But I don't think he will. I think he's a nice guy. But that's the point, I would say, with Knowles there. And also, Knowles is just a problematic figure who said a lot of misogynist and transphobic things that I don't like. To quote Chief Keef, that's that shit I don't like.
The masses as a rallying point, right? But poetry and philosophy can be taken up as a rallying point. And
that's what this book does, right? I mean, if you actually read the Communist Manifesto, which most young people who say, well, if you read the Communist Manifesto.
When he says poetry and philosophy can be used for a rallying point, Jordan Peterson, I'm saying this for you, Jay, isn't wrong at all, because that is what is happening. A book like the Communist Manifesto uses poetic and rhetorical devices mixed with some philosophical analysis to be a rallying cry. A rallying cry for what? For workers in Europe to recognize their collective power and to organize together to fight against the repressive conditions of industrial labor. If you think Marx is being dramatic, read about what working life was like in factories in 19th century England. In particular, I got to shout out some of my ancestors here. A lot of Irish people, get shipped over to England in the mid-19th century because they got work because there's no food and work left in Ireland because of the colonial oppression from the English. But there's accounts of workers living in like a foot of mud and shit. People working 80-hour weeks. People getting paid in like script they can only use at the factory store. Plants and factories having pubs attached to them so that the workers' only solace was going and using the money they just made to pay their boss to get sloshed at the pub. There is a reason that Marx and Engels are writing for that crowd, because to be very like blunt, like shit sucked. So yes, they're using rhetoric, poetry, and philosophy to try to convince them to make shit suck.
It's a pretty good book. It talks about sharing. They haven't read it. They haven't read it. It's about that thick. Yeah. Okay, the one I have in mind, the 1998 Penguin Classics edition, edited by Martin Malya, is 56 pages. Yeah. But in my Marxism course at Grove City College, every spring semester, we read it. It's only 56 pages. It's not long. But it is a, you're right, if it was an economics work or tract, I mean, it would have data, it had information. It wouldn't be anything that could rally anybody.
But it's not an economic work, and that's the point, right? And I think that this is the thing that annoys me sometimes. And maybe this is me being hypocritical in terms of like the expertise thing. And honestly, I change my mind on this stuff a lot. So it's fair if y'all want to call me out on that. I just think if you're going to read a text and you're going to talk about an author and you're going to write a friggin' book about them, if you're going to teach a college class about them, you have to understand the context of that work. You have to understand its context intellectually, in an intellectual and historical situatedness, and you have to understand its context in relation to their other works. The Communist Manifesto is a co-written tract by Marx and Engels that wasn't an academic text, it wasn't an economic text, and it wasn't trying to be, because they were doing that separately. You know what I'm saying? Hey, and thanks for joining. This is Wisecrack Live on a Friday. I'm Michael Burns. I'm here with producer Michael. How you doing, producer Michael? I'm doing pretty good. Just checking out the chat. How are things going over there, producer Michael? Oh, they're going fine. I'm holding this. I'm doing this for the first time. I'm having fun with it. Thank you so much for being here with me. I really appreciate you. I'm here because our stream got shut down. There's not a sound of vacuuming, but someone is doing yard workouts at my window right now. It's like, don't they know? Let's get into 666 because we're talking about Marx and Satan. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks to everyone in the chat. I'm sorry I'm not as engaged as normal because I love you guys so much. We're getting close, but I got the chat. I'm doing all this stuff. I mean, this is crazy. I got a lot going on today. I should have taken 9 ADHD pills.
Right, but this is more like a Jefferson Declaration of Independence, right? And
except it's aimed at the Mephistophelian aim.
Yes,
right,
yeah. It's actually the polar opposite, but in the sense of Adams and Franklin saying, we need a kind of statement here to rally everybody for this.
This is total. Look, watch me say this. That is not an unfair comparison. So I don't know why they're acting like that's weird. Like, no, they're just right. Yeah, that's what it is. The Communist Manifesto is more like a political tract or a rallying cry because that's literally what it is. It's not an economic text.
Can write. That Jefferson's a great writer, right? 33 years old, fantastic.
You know what else Thomas Jefferson was good? But here's the thing. I bet, and this is me being presumptive, I bet this guy likes Thomas Jefferson. Do you want to know what Thomas Jefferson did when he was young and old? Do we want to read those things into what he did? Do you want to talk about what he got up to? He did some dirty things as well. He was a dirty person. He also did some fucked up things in bedrooms. So, producer Henry isn't here to be like, too much, Michael, stop, don't get fired.
Writer, one of the course of human events just puts it out. And of course, in his case, it's truth and it's inspiring. But when Marx sits down
Matthew,
to write,
thank you so much. Shout out to Matthew. Shout out to social workers. Seriously, that's a sick job. You're out there making the world a better place. Really appreciate you. And I have a special place in my heart for Ohio. I was raised by a woman from Ohio, so shouts to you, Matthew. Have a great one.
The Communist Manifesto is kind of a diatribe. It's really, there's a lot of anger in there. There's a lot of catchphrases, kind of revolutionary catchphrases. A guy who could really turn a phrase.
Yes, but again, this is correct. This is true. It is an angry text because they are writing about people that are being systemically dehumanized by factory owners in the conditions of industrial capitalism. Engels in particular has some anecdotes because Engels at one point, this is why I think I might be related to Engels. Probably not. But Engels had a lady friend at one point named Mary Burns. There you go. My favorite aunt. Her name's Mary Burns. But who was like this fucking Irish peasant that was living in a goddamn shit hut in Manchester. And he was like, oh, this sucks. Pretty Irish girl like you in a place like this. But yes, they were angry because they were seeing that. And yes, there are slogans because, again, it is a strategic text. This isn't an academic text. This is something that, like, dudes who were working their asses off and barely had any energy left were maybe reading by the candlelight in a pub over a pint of warm ale. So, yes, you need catchphrases they can remember.
Yep. I mean, that was Marx.
Radical leftists are very good at turning phrases.
They really are.
Let's go. Radical leftists are very good at turning phrases. Hashtag bars.
Yeah, gender-affirming care. That's a stroke of genius.
Yeah.
Diversity, equity.
That was a hell of a turn. Gender-affirming care. It's a hell of a phrase. No, it's just a literal description of a thing. Diversity. And also, too, like, gender-affirming care isn't like a radical leftist economic idea. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, if anything, is a really neoliberal concept. These people call everything that they don't like radical left. Sometimes is it the case that I call things I don't like alt-right when they're not? Sometimes I go too far, but I admit that. And I'll say my bad when the time comes. But it's too much. It's too much.
And inclusivity.
Right.
Seriously, like,
Totally.
like once those slogan.
You know, another radical leftist turn of phrase, real G's move in silence like lasagna. First person to say artist and song title in the chat's my best friend.
You know what the derivation of the word slogan is?
Right.
This is so funny.
What's that?
It comes from the Welsh. 2 words, sluag and garum. Sluag is S-L-U-A-G-H and garum is G-H-A-I-R-M. Sluag, garum. Battle cry of the dead.
Oof.
That's what a slogan is.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
it's so perfect,
Wow.
right? Because
Wow.
it conjures up images of armies of the dead fighting against the living.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Marx
what a
would like
slogan
that.
is. Oh, yes.
Right.
No kidding.
Yeah, he
No
was really
kidding.
good at slogan.
Armies of the dead fighting against the living. Shout out to the Return of the King. Wait, is it Two Towers or Return of the King where that happens? Oops.
Yeah.
In fact, to the point where the only part of the end of the Communist Manifesto anybody remembers is workers of the world unite.
Yeah.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
Yeah.
But you know, people just back
To each
up.
according to their need is pretty damn good.
That's a good one too.
That's a good one.
But if you just
They're right. They're totally right. That was a great line. You know what? These guys are cooking now. They're cooking.
go back one paragraph at the end, right? The communists support every revolutionary movement, the forcible overthrow of all existing conditions. I mean, those lines are in the next.
Okay, so he's trying to say that that's bad, but here's what that's saying. They support the overthrow of conditions that dehumanize people. They support the overthrow of monarchy and industrial wage slavery. You might disagree with that, and that's fine, but like that's the context of what's being said, which isn't too crazy. I mean, that would be like if you were writing a track, if you were part of a group that was categorically anti-racist, and you were like, we support the overthrow of all forms of like colonization and white supremacy or whatever, I'd be like, yeah, cool. Did I make up that part of the Lord of the Rings where there's the army of the dead? Remember those guys that they come back and they do the thing? I think that's the thing. Guys, come on, we got to get to 666 on Satan Day. We got to get to 666 on the day we're talking about Karl Marx and old Satan. Again, thanks for being here. This is Wisecrack Live. I'm doing alone. Go Capital Gains. What's up, Peter Rossi? And, you know, just a reminder as well, this is Wisecrack Live. I'm holding it down solo. We have our Patreon. You can sign up for it if you want. If you drink coffee, get some fucking Yes Please coffee. They're not paying me to say that. We just get a kickback if you get it. It's really fucking delicious. YesPlease.coffee. Use code Wisecrack. Yeah, you know what? Lucktrick, bring me in on Discord. I don't know how to make Discord go on this. You didn't teach me that, Dad.
2 final paragraphs.
Yep, Lux is one of my dads.
That's what
canon.
really the manifesto is all about.
Okay, so I want to get back to a question that we touched on but didn't fully address. What in the world is an atheist? Absolutely.
Right.
Why is an atheist centered on, what would you say,
Dead card,
analysis
Lord of the Chat.
of and identification with religious tropes?
Yeah.
Right now, he claims atheism, but you don't write a false.
Okay, so this is silly. Why is an atheist messing with religious tropes? Because I used this analogy for something else the other day. Like, how do I phrase this? I guess I was going to try to be cute. I'll be literal. Even if you do not have a personal belief in divinity, if you do not personally have a theological belief, what you cannot abstract from is the fact that you live in an intellectual, academic, ethical, and spiritual culture that is largely defined by those ideas and structures. For example, American political life and American cultural life is dominated in many ways by structures taken from religion, in particular like the Abrahamic religions. In Marx's day, religion, and in particular Christianity, was a commonplace structure in intellectual work. There's a reason why one of Hegel's first works, Spirit of Christianity and Its Fate, it is a work of theology. There's a reason as well. If you look at a lot of 18th, 19th century philosophers, look at their Wikipedias, shout to Wikipedia. They studied theology because religious ideas were what formed a lot of academic subjects and ways of looking at the world. So to say, why is someone who's an atheist taking seriously the structures and narratives of religion? I mean, I don't even see the value of that question. It just doesn't really make sense. Let's see. So Jay says, Michael forgives Marx for not being academic, holds every critical leftist politics to a high standard. Jay, but it's not everyone. I really mean this, Jay. It's these two guys. One of them, Dr. Kengor, teaches classes on Marx at the university level. And Jay, I hope we can agree on this, man. Like, if you teach a college class on Marx, you should know a little bit better than this. Jordan Peterson should know better than this, as someone that does Jungian analysis, as someone whose literal work, like his book Maps of Meaning, is about how religion gets used structurally to create forms of meaning, help us understand the world. They know this. So there's one of two things that's happening here. Either A, they know this, but they're acting like they don't know this because they're participating in some culture war BS to try to make us all scared of Marx. It's reminding me of like episode 2 or 3 of the most recent season of The Boys. So that's one option. They know that, but they're acting like they don't know it for some reason. Or 2, they're just kind of dumb. If there's a third option, let me know.
Like poem. Being in league with Mephistopheles is not technically atheism. Now, you might ask about the relationship between the two, but that's a different question. But so what do you make of the fact that he was obsessed with these Faustian notions and with ideas of conjuring up the underworld, despite his professed atheism?
Yeah, by the way, even the phrase "from each according to his ability to each according to his needs," that's a twisting of the scripture, of the New Testament.
Right. Yes, and he knew that. This is driving me crazy. He knew that. Oh, Marx understood theology really well, and he used it as a way to understand economics because what he saw was that Protestantism, I mean, this is like, Protestant work ethic, guys, what Marx saw in Germany and in England and around Europe in the middle of the 19th century was the way in which religious ideals and Protestant ethics were being grafted onto industrial labor, and how this was directly benefiting the owners of factories and the owner of the means of production and those who possess capital at the detriment of the working people who were the congregants of these churches. Marx knows this. And because he knows this and understands this, that is the language that he speaks in. Why would he use a turn of a biblical phrase? Because most of the people who are reading this writing are likely Protestant Christians or Catholics or whatever in Europe at the time. So when they say things like that and they act like that's shocking now, to go back to Jay's point, like, would I be that angry if it was just like some well-intentioned person saying that? No, I'm angry about this because these are two people that have described themselves on camera as PhDs, as scholars who do research. One of them has written an entire book on Marx and teaches a class on Marx. How do you not get this?
Right.
But in his case, and people have asked me this. They say, well, if he had this fascination with the devil, it must have only been in a kind of
rebellious... Wait, and I see the point, too. Someone in the chat said this. I see a couple of you said this, but, like, I hope the point, too, is, like, don't over-focus on the idea that, like, Michael is defending Marx. I guess that's kind of what's happening. But what my real concern is if... Here's the thing. I'm fine if you hate Marx. I'm fine if you love Marx. I'm fine if you're indifferent to Marx. Do it for the right reason. Do it because you understand the thing. And what's becoming worrisome is that in culture and a lot of people's writings, and this like sort of trickles down, people just think that Marx did and said stuff that he didn't do or say. And that's bad. I don't want you to, I don't want you to like a person. I don't want you to be excited about someone's ideas based on misunderstanding. I don't want you to hate him based on misunderstanding. Friggin' hate Marx all day. Who cares? Just some guy that wrote some stuff and died. None of these people are gods. Sorry that I used the metaphor of divinity. But, yeah.
way, like Mikhail, like Mikhail Bakunin, Saul Alinsky in the intro to Rules for Radicals, right? Lest we forget at least an over-the-shoulder acknowledgement to that first.
Like the stream, and I'll go enroll in Dr. Paul Kengor's class.
Of all rebels who won himself his own kingdom.
Yeah,
Lucifer.
lest we forget. Yeah, no
Lucifer.
kidding. Yeah, you don't walk by that sort of statement accidentally.
Right.
No, definitely not.
And a lot of people on the left do. They're like, well, he's just being figuratively.
Well, those are the same people
Well, he's also using literary devices.
who think that Milton's Lucifer is a hero.
And
I've never hung out with any. When I go to the radical leftist meetup at the local Satanist temple, no one's ever like, Milton's Lucifer was my guy.
Lots of people thought that.
and to give their magazines names like the Jacobin. Of
Absolutely,
all things, right?
absolutely.
Why the hell would you name your magazine?
Yeah.
It's called Jacobin because I don't even like that magazine. Here's the thing. I don't like the magazine Jacobin. I have some problems with it. It's named Jacobin because the Jacobin was, the political party in the French Revolution. That was a revolutionary party. So it's just a reference to that.
After a group that guillotined 40,000 people in France in 1794.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've also noticed that I've read a lot of comments by online anonymous trolls. A lot. And I've looked at their name.
Why?
And there's a sizable minority of the really vicious online trolls who adopt satanic names.
Absolutely.
Like far more than you'd expect.
This is just, again, they're just kind of saying stuff here.
And it's not cute or funny.
No.
And not in the least. And it sums up the manner in which they deal with the world with much more accuracy than they might imagine when they've had the, what would you call it, unmitigated gall to dare such a thing.
Right. In fact, one of them, and I won't say who it is because she could end up watching this, but it's somebody, I know the name of the magazine, and her pen name, I won't give the first name, but the last name is Diavolo.
Right.
Diavolo, which is Italian for devil.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
there's like a wine. Oh, is it a South American or Italian wine? There's like a wine maker that's like Diavolo or Diablo at the thing. It doesn't mean it's like evil wine. These people just don't understand how language works. They don't understand how people play with tropes.
I mean, what does that tell you?
Yeah.
Guys, you can't listen to the Rolling Stones because they have a song called Sympathy for the Devil. You can't listen to the Grateful Dead because they have a song called Friend of the Devil. Oh God, what's another song? You can't use the phrase "the devil's in the details." You can't use the phrase "the devil you don't." You can't eat deviled eggs. But you can't eat angel food cake or something like that.
Well, that's the question.
Nom de plume of all things, Diabolo.
Well, it is the question. What does it tell you? Because the people who pick that would say, well, Lucifer is misunderstood because he's just a rebel against tyranny.
Sure.
Right. And so that's their.
Also, like, I get caring this much if you believe, I guess, like Satan's like a real guy. But if we're talking about the use of literary figures from sacred texts, I just don't know why you're so mad.
That's their standard. The devil is misunderstood. He's just a rebel against tyranny.
That's how Mikhail Bakunin, who was one of Marx's associates, God in the State. He wrote about Lucifer in this heroic way.
Yeah.
And he was an atheist. Now, in Marx's case, all right. So he wasn't an atheist in 1837 when he wrote that first poem, okay? Even by 18...
I think it's dangerous as well to, like, act as if... I mean, first of all, I've already talked about this. It's kind of meaningless to take obscure biographical facts from an intellectual's life and then use those as a way to, is like a magical way to interpret what they're saying. I think it's also really dangerous to say that we can know with any sense of certainty what someone's internal theological sentiments were about whatever at any point in their life. I think it's kind of just dangerous and silly. Let's skip ahead to a point of the video that is entitled, get ready for this, guys. Was Karl Marx a Satanist? Again, I'll just say, if you're just tuning in, oh, we did it? Guys, I can't scream it because I got my kid's sleeping upstairs, but we'll go full screen for this bad boy. We did it, guys. We got to Sace on our own. We did it without producer Henry, but we miss producer Henry. Give some love to producer Henry, our fallen soldier, in the chat. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for getting to our magical number when it's just us alone. It's just me alone in my humble abode with my online friends, watching my little video of my little man in his little suit talking about his little books with his little friends. So thank you so much. We did it, Joe. We really did it. We'll go back to the thing now. I just want to show that I could switch scenes to show that I'm really a high level producer.
So let's attack this.
Now, was he a Satanist, right?
Well,
how cool that we got to it right when we went to is Karl Marx a Satanist? What does that even mean?
That is a whole different thing that I can't personally answer.
Well, it seems not unreasonable to presuppose that he was a devotee of the Mephistophelian ethos.
Yeah, I think that's a
right. So
really
the question is, what constitutes a Satanist? Well, someone who generates a murderous doctrine, that raises questions. I mean, dead serious about that. Like, right. The most murderous doctrine ever promoted in the roughly Judeo-Christian context by a large margin. So
it is wild that they will say that Marx produced the most murderous doctrine. There's this thing that happened in the 20th century that someone should tell Jordan Peterson about.
I would say it's incumbent on those who would defend him to describe why we wouldn't just assume that. But the part of the reason that I was so interested in talking to you was because I felt that what you documented in your book was extraordinarily telling from a psychological perspective, because I know how these things work. And it is not something that can be overlooked.
We should do Peterson bingo. I saw someone in the chat say that. Next time we watch a Peterson video, every time I say it's going to be my last one. Watching Jordan Peterson for me is like my version of quitting smoking. I don't smoke, but when people quit smoking, I feel like they're always like, this is my last one, but there's always another one. That's what this is like for me. But it'd be fun to do JP bingo.
Was his favorite quote.
Right.
I mean, especially not when you understand Goethe's centrality in the German intellectual tradition. That's like having a favorite quote from Shakespeare, right? And it's not any old quote. It's the central credo of Mephistopheles. So that's extraordinarily telling. Now, I do have another...
Can I give you a...
Yes.
So Robert Payne, the very serious academic, no right-winger, British man of letters, the guy who really broke this first in his 1968 biography of Marx, all right? His chapter where he talks about this stuff is...
Let's look up... I don't know anything about Robert Payne. I feel like I'm doing the thing now that I hate people for doing. Robert Payne, academic, British. I don't know. What's the feeling this guy? British Canadian anthropologist. Is this the guy? Wait, he studied the Inuit people for his dissertation. Where did he talk about Marx? Is this the guy that wrote about Marx? It seems like he wasn't. He said Robert Payne, right? I guess there's another way you could spell Payne with the Y. Robert Payne. And I'll type in Marx. Marx, a biography by Robert Payne. Let's see, unless we even just find Robert Payne on his own. Okay. He worked in Singapore and China, a prolific author. He was in the Book of the Month Club. He was educated, He was a shipwright. Marriages, writing, critical reaction. He was described as a poet and believer. His biography of Hitler was seen as attempting to humanize the inhuman Hitler. Payne was said to be a firm adherent to the conspiracy theory of politics. His book was described as easiest to read. You forget the Los Angeles Times commented on the internet. Payne makes a persuasive case. The biography is random aspects. Okay, it just sounds kind of boring. But hey, now we know. Knowing's half the battle.
It's called The Demons in his Marx biography. Now, he wrote this, and I'm not saying that I endorse this. As an academic, I can't say if this is correct. There were times when Marx seemed to be possessed by demons. That's what Payne wrote. And now this I would at least more endorse. Marx had the devil's view of the world and the devil's malignity. Sometimes he seemed to know that he was accomplishing works of evil.
What does that even mean?
I think that gets closer to it. Now, Pastor Richard Wurmbrand, who wrote the famous book Tortured for Christ, and was tortured for Christ in Romanian prisons by communist captors who were shouting, "I am the devil," while they were torturing him. He did a book called Marx and Satan. He's convinced that Marx was a Satanist and did some things ritualistically that it might have even...
This is crazy. I'm just telling you, this is crazy stuff right
been
here.
Satanic, but I can't say that. I can't endorse that.
But you see evidence of that in his play.
I've never seen...
In terms of at least his...
So Jordan Peterson just said, you see evidence in his work that he did satanic rituals. Guys, I really wonder... Oh, God, I wish we can find... Wait. you can search bibliographies. Okay, let's do this. Let's look up. Okay, Paul. So let's look up Paul Kengor Marx. Okay, we got that. Can we search this? Oh no, we can't. 'Cause you know, sometimes it lets you like search the book. Maybe if we do the Kindle, it'll let us. Nah, because I want to see if we can find the bibliography. You know, we could. You know what we'll really do? We're gonna do something crazy right now. The Devil and Karl Marx. We're going crazy today. Oh, how do you do it? Is it? Oh, I always get this wrong. Is that the right website? Okay. The Devil and Paul Kengor. Oh, EPUB. We don't want an EPUB. We can't get a fucking PDF of this shit. Okay, never mind. I was gonna do a whole thing, guys. I was gonna do a whole thing. Let's keep going.
Fantasies.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
In fact, Paine even goes so far as to say, Vladimir Lenin, right? There's a statement from Lenin which said, when I was a teen, I broke from all religion. I took the cross from my neck and I threw it in the rubbish bin. And Paine has a quote where, not Paine, Richard Wurmbrand, where I think he believes that Lenin even stomped on it. He says, well, that's a satanic ritual. I don't know that it is.
Do you know how many teenagers do that, guys? I'm not saying it's good, but you know how many teens do that? One of my best friends, shout to Philip, I don't think he watches streams. He watches videos, though. He, used to be a Christian, and he wears a shirt with an upside-down cross on it sometimes. He's a really nice guy.
Or not. But there's another case of Lenin who at least did the work of the devil. I mean, Lenin had, according to Robert Conquest, W.H. Chamberlain, the first historian of the Russian Revolution, 500,000 people were killed from 1917 to 1923 under Lenin, not even including the Russian Civil War. If that's not the devil's work, I don't know what the hell is, right?
But I guess I'm going to be a devil's advocate. Oh, no, I just became a Satanist. But to be a devil's advocate, I guess, against myself, or not even against myself, I just feel like, what does it mean when they say the devil? What does it mean when they say Satanist? Lucifer is obviously a figure from biblical text, from para-biblical text and other things, but I'm confused.
But I think what Paine said in the latter quote, the devil's view of the world, the devil's malignity, and at the very least, this identification.
Let's skip ahead.
Here's something that was bothering me too when I was reading
to the section called Presentism and the Arrogance of the Left. We'll look at a couple more things and we'll wrap up. But you guys probably saw, I want to get into this. I want to actually look at some Marx before we end.
your book. So one of the things that the radical leftists do, especially, and this is sort of in proportion to their, what would you say, their intellectual arrogance.
Wait, I want to ask a favor though. For all the real homies, you know who you are. Let's not argue too much in the chat today because I just don't want to worry about that, you know? So let's just try to, at least if for the regulars, let's just agree to disagree on some stuff today.
Is elevate themselves on moral grounds above the great figures of the past. So I can hardly stand going into art museums anymore because a typical art museum now, and this is true even of the greatest museums in the West, is a great painting with a little polemic off to the side written by some art critic who's basically claiming moral superiority over the artist because of their adherence to whatever the current ideological doctrine is. It's sickening.
Even though that work of art has...
Okay, so what he's saying is it's sickening if you go to a museum and there's a work of art and then the thing is oh yeah, this artist was wildly anti-Semitic, or this artist beat the shit out of his wife. I don't know. I don't think that it means you can't look at that art, but I think that considering context around works is important.
Has survived for 6 centuries. We're still looking at it.
Just because something survived for 6 centuries doesn't mean it's good. You know, if we could make a list of things that survived for 6 centuries in world history, we'd have a pretty dark list.
Imagine what a great advantage it is to the art critic to be able to claim moral superiority to a truly great man of the past without having to actually have accomplished anything.
This is so weird. So you can't criticize anything about an artist from the past because you haven't accomplished anything. That's like the people who say that you can't. Oh, what does a film critic know? You can't criticize movies because you didn't make a movie. Bad argument.
I mean, what a deal, right? Okay, so but I would like to be very careful in our conceptualization here.
Be careful.
I've thought the same way about Foucault.
Yeah.
So Foucault was.
If you want to know more about Peterson and Foucault, we talk about this a little bit in our video. I think the video on Peterson and post-Marxism. If you ever have questions about Foucault, ask Lux.
Person, rather unpleasant, you might say, in his personal habits. Like, seriously unpleasant.
He's calling someone unpleasant in their personal habits. This is a guy almost died because he only like took benzos and ate meat for a year. I am not criticizing someone for being addicted. Addiction's a disease. It's a real thing. We got to have empathy for people. But do you think he smelled great when he was just benzoed up, smelling like elk meat all day? Come on.
And so, but here's our conundrum. In the story of Noah is described as a man who's good in his generation.
Do you think Noah smelled good?
And it seems to mean something like, for his time and place, he was a good man.
Noah watched everyone die. Noah chilled out on a boat as he listened to the screams of drowning humanity.
Man.
But God said it was okay.
And there might be men that are so good that their goodness transcends their time and place. And I think we remember men like that. But the typical amount of goodness that you could expect from someone is that for their time and place, they're good. Okay, so now the temptation would be for us to look back into history, to great figures of the past, and to say, we understand what wasn't good, even if we misunderstand it, about their time and place, and then to say, well, those people weren't good, and we are now morally superior to them, and we can remove the detritus from our past. We can tear down the statues, for example.
Sure.
It's happening in Canada. We're going to tear down the statues of John A. Macdonald, who was the founding Prime Minister of Canada. And we point to his inadequacies as a person. Okay, so...
Churchill.
Absolutely. Churchill is a great example. And that sort of thing is happening all over the U.S.
Right.
Now...
Wait, so Jay asked the question. Jay said, Michael, do we agree that Marx is problematic? So I guess I don't think he's problematic. I don't think he's problematic. I do think, Jay, that... It's a hard one because I guess what do you mean by problematic? I disagree with a lot of what Peterson says. So I don't think that Marx is like the architect of the deaths of millions. I think that's a really weird and unfair thing to say. I think if we evaluate Marx on the basis of his own work, I do not think that it is perfect. I do not think that it is like biblically correct. I think that works like the German ideology, Paris manuscripts, and Capital do a really good analytic job. And I think that Marx was way more... Marx wasn't a like, this is what you should do in his analysis. Marx was really concerned with trying to figure out how things were the way they were and why things were the way they were. And I think his methodology for doing that was really good and really interesting. And I think that most academics or like even activists that utilize Marx these days, I think they're utilizing the methodology laid out. And Jay, when I say the channel has no political leanings, that's like half in jest, to be honest. Like most of us, I mean, we don't have to be cute here. You know, obviously most of us that work for this channel, you could call like, you know, politically progressive, things of that nature. The thing I've said before is I think that we all kind of share a sense of human empathy, in particular an empathy for people that are suffering, oppressed, marginalized, which is a good biblical principle. You get that in the Torah and the New Testament. So I think that you could say we're all pretty biblical in that way. And I think we all believe that everyone deserves to have a good life and access to basic, you know, human standards of living. So we do agree with all that sort of stuff. I saw someone bring up Enrique Dussel. Dussel is really interesting, guys. Dussel is a philosopher. I forget if he's from Mexico or just based there. Matthew, if you found the PDF, wisecracklive666@gmail.com. I'll put that in the chat too. And that's our email address in general. Actually, I'll check it because I think there might have been some things here. But yeah, I mean, that would be interesting too. I do think if like this guy or Peterson really wanted to go hard at critiquing Marx, the issue isn't to say Marx is bad because 50 years, 70 years later, some guy did a thing and was like, oh, Marx made me do it. And I'm not trying to like downplay stuff. The interesting critique would be if you looked at the dialectical methodology and showed the internal incoherencies of that, or tried to break it down that way. You know, and some people have. There's a lot of really good scholarship. So a lot of Italian philosophers and political theorists in the past 50 years have made really valid critiques that are like, okay, Marx's analysis, good in many ways. It's maybe kind of shit at talking about contemporary labor. Why? Marx was concerned with material labor, people in factories doing stuff, but a lot of labor now is immaterial labor. I forget who came up with that term. It's one of the Italian theorists. But, you know, we think about immaterial labor, all of us who like work on computers, right? We're not doing like factory work. How does a Marxist analysis apply when we think about immaterial labor or like technological capitalism? It doesn't necessarily work all the way. We need some additions to it. So I think that's Important to note. And yes, shout to Pride Month. Shout to everyone who's enjoying Pride Month. Hopefully everyone had a good Juneteenth, especially people that deserve to be celebrating Juneteenth. Let's watch a little bit more of this.
Now, how do you know that the leftist criticism of your critique would be something like, has to be something like, you have to separate the man, the works from the man? Okay. And I have some sympathy for that because there are, like, Picasso is a good example. And Picasso, by any measure, was a remarkable artist and unbelievably productive. He produced 3 pieces of art a day for 65 years, right? I can't remember how many tens of thousands of pieces. It's some insane number, and was revolutionary in that manner.
But by the way, the left will not separate the accomplishments of the man from the personal life of the man when it comes to people they don't like.
Yes, I know.
Yes,
I know, but how do you...
They're very selective.
Okay, but...
Again, too, like, this whole phrasing of the left. What he just said might be totally fair, but I think the important thing you then have to do is, like, show the example. So if you're going to say the left like to be selective, sure, maybe that's true. If you're going to do that, then show me an example. Like, show me an example of someone on the left, you know, quote unquote, who, let me see one thing. You know, give me an example of something. Okay, so someone sent us the book. I want to see one thing. And this is just a little test. So this is his book right here. Now, there is, well, let me control F this. There is a book that's called Love and Capital. The author's name is Mary Gabriel. It's one of the agreed upon most important books about, okay. This is good. I'm not going to look through all the way. Look at me giving credit where credit's due. He at least quoted Mary Gabriel's book. Okay, cool. That is all. I want to see that. I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Maybe we'll look at it a little bit more later.
But how do you, as an academic, you can imagine that there should be some separation between the product.
But I think this is different too, right? Like, sorry to say it this way, but, like, for example, we talk in one of our most recent videos. It's on anxiety. Watch it if you haven't, because no one did. But in the video on anxiety, I talk about Martin Heidegger, who was a Nazi. And I just say, Martin Heidegger, who was a Nazi. Not good. We don't like that at all. And then we talk about his ideas. And I just think there's a way that it doesn't have to be an either or, right? It doesn't have to be, we talked about Heidegger and no one say that he was a Nazi. It doesn't have to be Heidegger's a Nazi, so we can't read his books or his ideas are bad. There's a way to kind of do both.
Of thought and the personality of the person.
Right.
Okay, so are you concerned about that in relationship to your critique of Marx and Marxism?
No, it's a great question. And
Lux makes a point in the chat that Hannah Gadsby did try to do it with her Picasso thing.
And by the way, in case we
which
don't
was
get
whack,
to,
and no one in the art
people
world
should know
liked it.
Marx's views on race, especially toward black people. I mean, he had hideous views toward black people, all stuff that should get him canceled. I don't believe in canceling anybody, but the things that the left is willing to cancel, this or that American figure.
I kind of don't want to touch this one of the 10-foot pole. We were talking about Thomas Jefferson earlier. I think that let's just say this, you know, I don't know if I'm on the left. I don't know where I am anymore in this goddamn vortex we're all in. I don't know anyone. I've never met a person who won't look at a 19th century author especially and be like, oh, this person was fucking racist though. Or they were a misogynist or whatever. I just, again, like, and this, I want to keep watching because they kind of actually look at some text in a bit. But, like, we're an hour in. I know I've skipped around a little bit. We are not talking about ideas. We're just talking about biographical
because
facts.
it may be a statement about race or somebody
it's like people just read Wikipedia.
What Marx said about black people is unbelievable. You'll be reading letters in German between Marx and Engels, and all of a sudden the N-word pops up. You know, the American, English racial epithet. N-I-G-G. It's not like the German word for Negro or black. It's like, oh, look at that. And they were, in fact, his daughter was married to a guy named.
Do you think that Kengor has said the N-word? True or false?
Paul Lafargue, who was, I guess, partly Cuban to some degree. And Marx and Engels are sitting there trying to figure out in a letter, deducing with scientific accuracy how much N-word blood is in his vein.
Rowing is boring.
Oh, it made us
hard,
watch an ad.
But it's a full body
We've had a
workout
really good
that
run.
engages 86% of muscles.
Is it 1/8? Is it 1/12? And they called him Negrillo, the gorilla. And they made fun of him because he was black. And there's a letter from Engels to Marx's daughter who says something like, "Oh, I hear he's running for office in this district in Paris." Well, it contains a zoo. As somebody who's
Jay, thanks for that. I like our backs and forth, Jay. I hope you know that. I really do. I think it's fun. I think you are critical in an earnest and straightforward way. And I feel like when I try to engage, you're just like a cool human back, and I appreciate that. If you disagree, be like Jay. You know what I mean? There's people sometimes that come on the stream and they're just like kind of mean and angry. And what does that do? You know, I get it. It's fun to be angry, but like, what does that do? But then someone like our buddy Jay Ashland is just like, I don't think what you're doing here makes sense. Here's why. And then we can talk about it. We don't always have to agree, guys. I'm not trying to be some softy here and say like, oh, it's all about conversation, but within reason. Why not? What do we got to lose? We're all just sad people at home on our computers. You know, let's just try to be human.
He should be a perfect representative of that district, being somebody who's just closer to the apes and the monkeys than we are. Ferdinand Lassalle, who they refer to as the Jewish N-word, they're looking at his cranial capacity and all kinds of. So I mean, very, very racist. If Patrisse Cullors, one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, who calls herself a Marxist, knew what Marx said about race, she'd probably call herself, I don't know, maybe a communist, but she probably shouldn't call herself a Marxist. But in Marx's case, to get to your question, the personal. What he believes.
I don't know. I don't like this guy telling a black woman what she should think or not think. But do you, bud?
In his writings and his ideas in the world.
Okay, let's skip ahead. I said I was going to end this at 11:30, but we'll go a little longer. The religion is opiate of the masses stuff. This is important.
His hatred of religion, right? Communism begins where atheism begins. The famous line, the opiate of the masses, right? That full quote. A lot of people, I've heard people say from time to time, well, I kind of see what he's getting at there.
Yeah.
I mean, religion can be like a sort of drug for people, right? Maybe like a placebo, maybe like a crutch. But if you read that whole line, religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature. It is the heart of a heartless world. It is the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. And then Lenin picked that up and said, yeah, like Marx said, religion is the opium of the masses. It is a kind of spiritual booze. It is medieval mildew. There is nothing more abominable than religion. And so what does that mean? Damn it, that means we're going to shut down the churches, right? And we're going to put them in jail, and we're going to be an officially atheistic country. We're going to create a league of the militant godless. You're not going to be allowed to be a religious person. So the private thoughts are actually being implemented and acted out.
Well, the other thing, too, about that phrase is it's actually a lie. And it's a lie in two ways. So there's a Canadian philosopher, Taylor, who wrote about this in a book he wrote on identity. And he pointed out that the medieval...
Watch me be positive. Charles Taylor, a really interesting philosopher who's referring to, he's written some great work.
Fear of hell was at least the equal of the medieval fear of death. Okay, so that begs a question. It's like, if your religion is an opium, then why is...
So let's do this. Let's first see what Marx means. Okay, so is my thing on the screen. Guys, I'm growing so much. I'm learning so much. Hey, thanks for being here. Before we just dive into this again, I appreciate you all hanging out. This is the first ever Michael O. Burns solo mission. My middle name O for Ophelia. That's not true. But thanks for being here. This is Wisecrack live on a Friday. It's a makeup for Wednesday, which got cut short. As always, we do have a Patreon if you want to join it. I am starting the book club soon. I think the decision's been made. Book club is starting with Byung-Chul Han's Psychopolitics. We might also do the Burnout Society. Is that what it's called? I'm sorry if I messed that up. But Byung-Chul Han's Psychopolitics. If you want to grab a copy, cool. If you want to just download one, whatever. I'm not a cop. But we're going to start that soon over on the Wisecrack University level on Patreon. I'm excited to do that. You know, I miss teaching sometimes. I miss being a bad professor. So I'll get to be a bad professor with some of you, hopefully. We'll talk together. You know, we'll do Q&A. We have a podcast on Patreon called Behind the Crack that Lux hosts. It's really great. It's often talking to other people on our team about what we do. It's kind of like nerdy, but it's pretty fun. We have our Don't Put That in the Video series that our friend Olivia makes, so when we film, I just say a lot of stuff, and a lot of it we can't really put in the video, but so we make our sort of extra cut of that as well. And then we have research podcasts from our buddy Amanda Shurker, who, you know, will talk to other writers and researchers on the team. and often like get into what couldn't we talk about in a video that's super interesting and weird that there just wasn't time for. So all that's on our Patreon. And, you know, of course, if you drink coffee, get some Yes Please coffee. They're our official coffee partner. Use code Wisecrack. You get 20% off. Just a reminder, not paying me to say that. I hit them up because I really like their coffee and asked them if they wanted to partner. So that's what we're doing. Okay. So let's talk a little bit. Highland Park. We like Highland Park. Okay. So here we go. So this is from Marx Introduction. It's a contribution to the critique of Hegel's philosophy of right. Okay. So here's an important line. So for Germany, the criticism of religion has been essentially completed, and the criticism of religion is the prerequisite of all criticism. Now, why would we say that the criticism of religion is the prerequisite of all criticism? Because, and I'll be quick here, thought is grounded in religious structure. Religious thought has structured philosophy, art, politics, all these things in Europe. Okay? Let's see. I want to skip ahead a little bit. Okay, here we go. We'll start here. The foundation of irreligious criticism is man makes religion, religion does not make man. Now here, Marx is building upon the work of Ludwig Feuerbach. Feuerbach thought all theology is anthropology. What that means, and Feuerbach's really interesting. I really recommend reading him. If you're interested in kind of the mix of religion and philosophy and like politics and stuff, Feuerbach's really underrated. He kind of sits between Hegel and Marx. Now, when Feuerbach says all theology is anthropology, what he was saying is like all theology, all our talking about God and divinity is really a way we reflect on our own humanity. So anthropology, you know, thinking about the human, the structure, the being of our human, all theology is anthropology. Religion is really a way of talking about our humanity. So Marx says religion is indeed the self-consciousness and self-esteem of man who has either not yet won through to himself or has already lost himself again. Now, when we say Marx hates religion, JP and his friends say that, I think that what Marx probably hates is what religion does. But he's saying religion is the self-consciousness and self-esteem of a man who has either not yet won through to himself or has lost himself again, meaning religion is a way that we develop our own self-consciousness and understand ourselves. Important thing to note with Marx, and this will make sense hopefully. Marx didn't hate capitalism. I'll say it again. Marx didn't hate capitalism. Marx thought capitalism was a necessary step in the further development of political and economic life. In the same way, religion, and this is what you see people like Marx, definitely, and someone like Hegel, religion is a necessary development in the development of human consciousness, but it's a development to be overcome. Marx says, but man is no abstract being squatting outside the world. Man is the world of man, state, society. The state and the society produce religion, which is an inverted consciousness of the world. I know some of you like Nietzsche, right? And what does Nietzsche say in the genealogy of morality? He basically says, the problem with religion isn't that like I'm a mad atheist and religion's bad. The problem is it makes us care about a world to come and not this world. The problem with religion, and this isn't true of all religions, I'm just kind of like paraphrasing Nietzsche here, is it focuses our gaze on the life to come, the world to come, and distracts our gaze from the now, you know? And says, because they are an inverted world. Religion is the general theory of the world. It's encyclopedic compendium. It's logic in popular form. Again, why does Marx talk about religion so much? Because he says religion is the logic of the world in popular form. Religion is how the world understands itself. It's spiritual point de vue. Its enthusiasm, its moral sanction, its solemn complacent, and its universal basis of consolation and justification. It is the fantastic realization of the human essence, since the human essence has not acquired any true reality. So, and again, if you've never read Marx before, I'm just saying, it's not like this text isn't just like, kill them all. You know, he's not Robert Durst. So religion is the fantastic realization of the human essence, since the actual human essence hasn't acquired true reality. The struggle against religion is therefore indirectly the struggle against that world whose spiritual aroma is religion. So the struggle against religion isn't about religion bad, right? It's against a world whose aroma is religion. So he says, religious suffering is at one and the same time the expression of real suffering and a protest against real suffering. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. Think about it this way. If we criticize the opiate crisis in America right now, the problem with the opiate crisis isn't that like people are idiots or that they're bad. The problem with the opiate crisis isn't that, trying to think of another way to put this. I guess I'll just cut to the point. The problem with the opiate crisis, of course, is we live in a world. The problem with the opiate crisis isn't the opiates. I mean, it is, but that's secondary to a world and an economic structure that A, makes it possible for people to produce and make so much money off this substance that gives people power, and B, a world that creates the conditions for the use of opiates. Look at where opiate addiction is popular. Look at the areas it's devastating the most. It's often areas with really shitty economic and social conditions where people's lives are bad. So of course they're going to seek something out to feel something. So what Marx is saying here is it's the opium of the people, because the world sucks sometimes. And when the world sucks, we look for something else. And hey, if religion is telling me there's a level of meaning or purpose outside of this, then sure. But it's a distraction, according to Marx, because then I'm distracted from trying to dismantle the conditions of the world that led to the need for religion in the first place. I'll read a little bit more. He says, the abolition of religion as the illusory happiness of the people is the demand for their real happiness. Again, he's not saying, get rid of religion so that Satan can reign. He's saying religion is giving us a false happiness. We got to demand real happiness. What is real happiness? A disalienated human existence, a human existence where what's primary is not our relationship to labor and economic acquisition and accumulation, where what's primary is our relationship to ourselves, our others, and our communities, and to things like poetry. To call on them to give up their illusion about the condition is to call on them to give up a condition that requires illusion. Here we go. To call on them to give up their illusions about their condition is to call on them to give up a condition that requires illusions. This is like saying to call on people to give up an opiate is to call on them to give up a world, to fight against a world that requires those opiates in the first place. The criticism of religion is therefore an embryo, the criticism of that veil of tears of which religion is the halo. So Marx makes it very clear right here that the criticism of religion primarily has to do with the criticism of a world that leads to conditions that make people want/need religions. Oh, Allie Cattails is here now. Good to see you, Allie. I wasn't looking at the chat, but I saw someone say, are you bald or not? Who doesn't know that? I'm not even answering that. Is this your first time here? Am I bald or not? If you want to know if I'm bald or not, get some more people to the stream. I don't know what the numbers are right now, guys, but go back. There are streams that confirm this. And for those of you who don't know, anytime we get to 1,000, so if we get 666, I do the 666 thing. And if we get to 1,000, I take my hat off and I bathe you in raw dome. Okay, so let me get back to this. So hopefully you all hung with that. I wasn't looking at the chat and all that. But hopefully our lesson on religion and Marx went well. If anyone has questions, ask them. But I wanted us to see that because I want us to then watch the rest of this conversation like knowing that that is what Marx actually says in the text they just referenced. So just to be clear too, the text we just read, which again is from a contribution to a critique of Hegel's philosophy of right. I'll actually put a link to this text in the chat. Look at me, I'm out here doing things. Hey, a six. I can't yell because my kid's asleep. Six. If I woke her up like that, I'm going to get a divorce. Okay, but that's the text. Now let's see what they say, and let's see and again, our standard here's our standard, that Dr. Paul Kengor, who wrote a book on Marx, who thinks he's a Satanist, who just referenced the very text that we just read, and I think Jordan Peterson, someone who talks about Marx a lot, should know at least what we were able to learn in 10 minutes on a stream.
Isn't it just all smiley faces and fun?
Yeah.
Right? Why? Well, hell is a really good start.
Yeah.
It's like, and the cynics might say, well, hell is a convenient place to put those you hate. But you have to be cynical and naive and stupid to come up with that theory, because you're a fool if you think that the fear of hell was anything but real among the believers in those periods of time where the reality of hell was amplified. They were terrified of that.
Yeah.
Right. And so what are you going to do? You're going to do something convoluted like, well, you have to leaven the opium with a bit of terror so that it becomes believable enough to be soporific. It's like...
What they're saying right now is not seen in the text that we just read.
Hey, man, your theory's getting a little convoluted at that point. It's like, why bother with hell? And so that...
I mean, I just want to look at one thing real quick. Okay. Just making sure. Let's see. Yeah, cool. But let's see. Did Satan come up here? Hell? No. Okay. Just checking.
Me, and it's the same with the Freudian critique, that it's a form of immaturity and over-reliance on a benevolent father. It's like, well, the father isn't all benevolent. There's hell.
Right.
And so you better watch your step.
Yeah.
And part of that is implemented by...
Wait, so is what they're saying that hell is real? I'm genuinely confused here, because he's critiquing Freud, but you got to watch your step. Yeah, I don't know. It's just...
terror. And then there's more to it.
And Jesus said, you want to follow me, pick up your cross.
Well, that's the next thing.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so we have Christ, the happy-faced God, who asks people only to believe that everything is good and there's no price to be paid for that. No, that's exactly, that couldn't be a bigger lie, because there isn't a larger sacrifice that is possible than the one that the founder of Christianity required of himself and his followers. There's nothing in that in the least that's...
But one could read elements of Christ and the Christian mission and look at the early Christian community in Acts as a community that's grounded in an idea that the world itself is producing oppression and unhappiness and disunity, and part of what it means is to sacrifice the allegiance to that world, to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, for the sake of building a new form of community. In the book of Acts, they shared all things in common in a communal sense. I don't know.
It's opiate. Now you might say, well, the happy thought that you go to heaven when you die is the opiate. It's like, well, wait a second. First of all, that only happens if you've actually lived a good life. And the cost of not doing that is, well, now we're back to the hell problem. So I don't buy the Freudian interpretation that it's all, immature dependence on the heavenly father, so to speak. And I certainly don't buy the Marxist doctrine that there's anything about it that's opiate. Now,
but okay, so this is what I would like them to discuss. What does Marx mean by opiate, right? And they're not giving us that, and that's why I find this discussion to be problematic. Like, if you're watching this, for example, and you're here and you fucking hate me and you think it's really offensive that we do the 666 thing and all that, I totally get it. But at this point, I'm simply asking you, why isn't it that when they're criticizing Marx for saying that religion is an opiate to the masses, why are they not defining their terms? Why are they not discussing what opiate means? Because it's not really on them to just say, oh, we all know what that means, when Marx clearly and subtly defines that in the text that we just read, which is a philosophical text. It's not a poem. That's what I'm left lacking. And you could be the biggest JP head in the world. And you know what? Better that than being a Ted Kaczynski head, I guess. But actually, maybe not. I don't know. But, why don't they know this?
You could say any naive person and any person looking for unearned security could take any doctrine and use it as a security blanket. And I think there's some truth in that. But boy, if you don't think that applies to radical leftism as much as it applies to Christianity.
But I think Marx would say that,
far more than it applies to Christianity, you're not thinking in the least. I mean, what you see with the radical leftists on campus now is that
it always comes back to radical leftists on campus. It literally comes back to these people just hate 19-year-olds that think differently than them. It's so boring, guys. Every generation hates young people that think differently. This is why they killed Socrates, because Socrates was hanging out, a little sus, I guess, a little Drake-ish, but hanging out with the kids of the powerful, teaching them to think differently. And then the powerful got mad that their kids thought differently. This is why Americans were like, it's fine when the National Guard killed some college students at Kent State, because they're just kids that think differently. Jesus Christ.
Make the presumption that all the leftist theorizing is predicated on an admirable compassion. It's like, well, if you want an opiate,
I don't think so an opiate is that leftist theorizing is predicated on compassion. I don't think that's true, because I think there's a difference from a theorizing predicated on compassion and a theorizing predicated on a fundamental egalitarian nature of humanity, an anthropology grounded in equality. I think that's different than compassion, because compassion is a way more religious principle, right? Compassion would be that I do my act of charity or my act of service out of my spiritual goodness, out of my sense of moral compassion, which isn't a bad thing. But I think a more structural leftist critique, like Marx, isn't like make things better because of compassion. It's just like, no, human existence should be such that we all have fundamental egalitarianism at heart and no one gets to exploit another person. It's not about compassion. It's about abiding by a fundamental moral principle.
There's one.
Right.
Hypersimplification, pathological hypersimplification that's morally self-serving and dangerous beyond belief.
Right.
So
PBL
and Marx said,
so
I was just
crazy.
looking for the quote right now and I couldn't find it. But one of his criticisms of Christianity later was he said it preaches cowardice, self-contempt, self-abasement, self-sacrifice. It's like, well, yeah. I don't know if it preaches cowardice, but it preaches self-sacrifice.
Those things don't go in the same category.
Right, exactly.
No, they certainly don't.
I know, but Christ didn't lack courage.
But again, Marx is not criticizing Jesus, Hector, Christ. Marx is criticizing the way in which religion gets used. So they said the point before about like, we're social scientists with PhDs. Well, then look at the social conditions that are underlying what he's talking about. The point is, if religion tells me I'm bad and the only way I can be good is I need to work harder, and my priest is telling me that I just have to work hard because God wants me to keep my head down and work. So I'm going to go to the factory 80 hours a week and I'm going to eat shit. My life's going to be terrible. That's what Marx is worried about, because that's what was happening. You know, that's how religion can get used. Religion can get used in really effed up ways. And that's what he's worried about.
Right. But for Marx, it was about selfishness. And in fact, that moment.
Yeah, I've never seen people use religion to be selfish.
Where the devil is tempting Christ, right? And Christ says to him, man does not live on bread alone.
Yes.
The Marxists
also lives on those chicken nuggies.
Actually acts as if man does live on bread alone.
Precisely.
And they believe that if you solve the economic problem, if you solve the class problem, I mean, that's the key to your utopia right there.
No, that's not true at all. That's not what Marx thinks. It doesn't create utopia. It creates at least a condition for a disalienated humanity. It doesn't magically fix everything. The point would be, though, we're probably going to have a better chance of creating a good society if everyone has the basic means of flourishing in human existence.
It's as if Augustine said we have a God-shaped vacuum in each of us, right? But he didn't say we have a dollar-shaped vacuum in each of us. But the communists, they act as if we have a dollar-shaped vacuum.
I know. That's...
But we do, because Augustine existed before capitalism, and now we exist in a society where an economic system has globbed onto a theological mechanism of belief such that the dollar has kind of taken over in this sense. But there you go. There you go, guys.
That's one of the other things that's so perverse about the communist system.
Right.
Although hypothetically they're anti-capitalist, they believe that there's an economic solution to every problem.
Exactly.
It's so perverse.
So
they're anti-capitalist, yet they believe there's an economic solution. Saying that implies that economics is inherently capitalist. Capitalism is a form of economic relation. One can look at economic solutions to problems that are not inherently in the capitalist form of economic relation. So what he just said there didn't make sense.
Yeah, so the communists and the leftists will say all the time, oh, you capitalists, all you guys care about money. No, Karl Marx,
definitionally, capitalism has money as its ultimate teleology. So yeah.
You care about his money.
Yeah.
I mean,
and yes, people do care about money because they need it to live under. This is like the people that say like, oh, you hate capitalism? Then why do you drive a car? Oh, you hate capitalism so much? Why are you on a phone? You hate capitalism? Why do you work at a capitalist company? It's like, I don't know, because I don't want to die just yet.
You care about is the material world. It's like they're fashioning their golden calf out of money and capital. They just think that if you redistribute wealth, if you can level the classes, if everybody has equal income, right, that's your key to utopia, right? They think man does live by bread alone.
Yes,
right?
definitely.
But we don't, right? So their alpha and omega is the economic problem.
Yeah.
It's not their alpha and their omega. We live in a world that's fundamentally ordered on economics. Look at how politics works. Think about how that's the underlying condition. So again, when we talk about Marx and we talk about people that are like Marxists, we're talking about a certain methodology of analyzing material, social, and historical conditions and looking at how cultural, spiritual, human relations are undergirded by those things. They make those things possible. So it's a methodology of looking backwards into those conditions, not just saying like stuff is bad because I don't like it.
Pope Benedict XVI said the problem with the communists.
I'm pretty sure Pope Benedict wasn't he a Nazi youth?
It's not that communism failed even so much economically, though it did, philosophically, though it did, but anthropologically. They failed to understand human nature. Yeah. They failed to understand people. And to just think that, and they put it this simplistically in the Communist Manifesto. People say all the time, give me a one-sentence definition of communism. Okay, that's easy because Marx and Engels did it. They said the entire communist theory or program may be summed up in this single sentence, 4 words: abolition of private property. Mm-hmm. Abolition of private property. They think that if you could abolish private property, this is the.
I'm going to say it's a thing that like I honestly struggle to fully understand sometimes. The abolition of private property, the way that Marx and Engels talk about it, isn't as simple as like you don't get to have stuff. We can talk about this more later. You can look this up, but it's not that.
Beginning of the key to your utopia of all things,
and that the utopia is entirely materialistic.
Marx also just isn't utopian. He's just not. And when they say it's materialistic, they're doing material analysis.
Right. So one of the things that I found particularly striking about Dostoevsky, especially in
Dostoevsky, cool writer. So let's just see if there's anything else here. Let's just look at what's the last thing they talk about? Let's look at how deep the communist infiltration has gone, and we'll stop.
Your book about Marx is a rather personal analysis of Marx. And that makes it, as you pointed out, somewhat unique, especially in its concentration on his motivations, let's say, and his poetic motivations, his revelatory motivations. What has that done to you personally in your understanding of Marx and let's say also your understanding of the world? Because there's a very strange theological dimension to your analysis of Marx. Okay, so was that theological dimension there before you wrote this book? Partly, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I think it probably was already there. I mean, I've always thought, Jordan, that when people ask me, how did communism catch on, right? First of all, it's never voted into power, and if it is, they don't stand for another election, right? I mean, Fidel Castro called for democracy and free and fair elections in 1959, right? And it never actually had them, right? The Kims don't put themselves.
I'm just saying, like, you could critique Castro or the Kims, but this is supposedly a book about how Karl Marx's poems make him a Satanist, and now we're just talking about Cuba in the 20th century.
Themselves up for election. But what's the rational reason why anybody, if you just read the Communist Manifesto, it's so clear that this is completely impractical. It can't possibly work. I think
just say why then. I'm not even saying you're wrong. Just like say why.
I think there's almost a kind of a diabolical explanation for this.
Why? What is it?
Ronald Reagan said.
Ronald Reagan. We're going to use Ronald Reagan. We're not gonna actually argue with Marx. We're not gonna talk about the text. We're gonna say it's impractical without quoting the text or talking about it at all. But you're gonna tell me how Ronald Reagan was the smart guy who could figure all this out. Ronald Reagan was an idiot.
In the grand destiny of humanity,
Ronald Reagan was an actor. He played different characters. Does that mean?
We are not matters of mere material computation, right? When great forces are on the foot in the world, we learn that we are spirits, not.
Do you think that Reagan wrote that?
Animals, right?
But funny, if he's saying that we're spirits, not animals, the fundamental thing that Marx is saying is that industrial labor at that time is dehumanizing and treating people like animals, and we're losing our spiritual element, which is a way to relate to ourselves, relate to our labor, relate to our human nature, our community, and other people around us. And when we get alienated from all that, we do become an animal.
I think there's almost a spiritual explanation behind this.
Right. So you think
it doesn't make mere rational sense
Reagan's our first woman president.
This idea could have ever been fostered or caught on. I think there's a diabolical explanation or force behind it.
Right. So you basically believe that the Marxist phenomenon cannot be understood outside an overarching religious interpretation.
I think so, and I think that's right. And we haven't mentioned the very.
I think that's totally fair, though. Okay, if anyone's still watching this who thinks I'm a bad boy. I 100% think what they just said is totally fair and reasonable. You can't understand Marx out of some sense of religious framework because what he's doing and what he's reacting to is dependent on a certain theological interpretation. In particular, his work is responding to Hegel, who is dealing with theological explanations of things. He's dealing with Feuerbach, who wrote about theology. Of course, if you understand the context of what's going on, you need that. I don't even think they understand that, because if they were going to say you can't talk about Marx without understanding the theological component, why didn't they talk about anything that we read a few minutes ago?
Opening words of the Manifesto. A specter is haunting you.
Yeah.
The specter of communism.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, and it says all the old allies of Europe, Pope and Tsar, Metternich and Guizot, German and French radicals and German spies, have entered into a holy alliance to exorcise this specter.
Yeah.
Marx and Engels open the book.
They're using language, guys. Like, people use like language. Like, if I'm like, I'm so hungry I could die, I'm not really gonna die. If I say that my job is soulless, it's crushing my soul, I'm just using language to make a point.
Look,
they were
with
writers,
a paragraph describing it as a specter, a demonic specter that needs exercise.
It didn't say demonic.
Again,
It didn't say demonic. It didn't say demonic. It didn't say demonic. It said specter. It didn't say demonic.
Playful with words.
Yeah, right.
No, there's too much of this.
There's
too much of this.
With words.
There's something deeper and
Every
darker
good
going
joke
on.
contains a seed of the truth.
That's
well,
right.
in my experience, for what it's worth,
But it wasn't even a joke. We're gonna stop. Saying
it was the horrors of communism that motivated me to think much more deeply about religious matters.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
if
Oh, me
you
too.
if you
Yeah.
familiarize yourself with the hell of the communist regimes, you end up at
But
a
they
level
just
of
like throw around words like hell and Satan. It doesn't mean okay. We'll stop there, I guess. You know, what have we learned today? Hey, like the stream if you haven't already. But you know, what did we learn today? We learned that it's okay to not like people. You know, it's okay to not like any number of dead theorists. They're just dead guys that wrote books. At the end of the day, they're just dead guys who wrote books. But if we're going to hate the dead guys that wrote books, let's read the books. Let's understand why we hate them. If we don't have time to read those books, that's fine. Then let's just not make polemic statements about what we think about those people. You can say, like, I don't think I really vibe with Marx. Oh, why not? I don't know. Like, I've heard some stuff, but I don't really have time to read them, so, you know. But let's hold people to higher standards. If public intellectuals, if scholars, if people that write books on Marx, people teach classes on Marx, if people like Jordan Peterson who fashion themselves as, like, the voice of a generation, if they're going to talk about this stuff, let's just hold them to a higher standard. You know? And let's do this ourselves. Because let's look inwards. You ever done this? You know? You ever kind of quickly reacted to something because you thought you didn't like them and you misread a text to serve your own purposes? I know I have. So let's be the change we want to see in this world. Let's read stuff. Let's be careful about it. And if we're going to critique something, let's understand it. You know? That's all I'm saying, guys. That's all I'm saying. Because one day we'll be dead. And one day they'll find the MP3s of the songs we wrote in college about how we were sad that girls didn't like us. And we used a bunch of poetry and religious language to describe the fact that we just desperately wanted to go to second base and no one wanted to do that with us. So we wrote songs about it. And they'll use those songs to try to unpack everything else we ever did. Or they'll find a picture. This isn't me. This might be one of you. You know, you and your friends went to Hot Topic. You had a little goth phase. You recorded a little video. You kind of went like, oh, that, you know. And they're going to use that to undermine everything you've ever done. So, you know, just think about all that. It's a great chat. This is a great chat of people here. Great chat of people I like a lot. Wisecracklive666@gmail.com. Are there enough people who live in Southern California that they would want to do a meetup? Our boy John brought that up. I think it could be an interesting option. If you're in the Los Angeles area and you want to do a Wisecrack meetup, shoot us an email. We'll be back on Monday. We'll be back on Wednesday as well. You know, Patreon. You can join it if you want. Yes Please Coffee. We like it a lot. So, you know, if when you're reading all these books, you want to drink some coffee, drink some of that coffee. But I don't care. I don't want your money. I just want you to take some time, think about stuff. And when you hear people on the internet, me included in this, when you hear people on the internet spouting off, you know, do some of your own research. Ask some questions. Ask what's really underlying that motivation. That's all I want from you. And mostly I want you all to have a really good weekend. I want you guys to have a really, really, really good weekend. don't stress about any of this stuff. There's so much stuff on the internet, you know, that we can worry about. There's all these debates that we can get caught up in. But, you know, you're going to die one day. I'm going to die one day. It's probably not heaven or hell. So let's just try to have a nice time. Let's try to have a nice time while we can. So do something nice for yourself. And right now, before I end the stream, if you're still here, first of all, like the stream if you haven't already. I want you to all think about one thing that you can do for yourself this weekend. It's going to make you happy. If you want to type it and share it for accountability, do that. But one thing, it could be you're going to take a walk. It could be you're going to let yourself watch a movie you haven't seen in a while. You're going to read a bit of a book. You're going to walk to your favorite coffee shop. You're going to go on a walk with someone you love. You know, you're going to reach out to that person that you did love and you haven't seen in a while and you think there might still be something there. You're going to play catch with your kid. You're going to go on a walk with your dog. Whatever it is, I want you to do it. And if you want to share it with us, Andrew said drink, and I love it. Okay? I love it. So do that. John wants to yell 666 at my baby. Do it because you guys deserve it. You really do. And I really appreciate you. And thank you so much for being with me on my first time ever doing the stream myself. Henry will be back next week. Thank you for all the patience of hanging out with me today. Really appreciate you. Take care of yourself this weekend. We'll see you next week. There is no new Wisecrack video today, but there's a video coming out on Friday. So if you need more content, you know, just go backwards. And thanks to helping us get to the 666. Have a great one. This is Michael O'Neill Burns signing off from Los Angeles, California. Good night and good luck.